So we're going to go straight into our next panel, which is the LeadIT panel, LeadIT panel, talking about industrial decarbonization and the role of cement. We're very happy to have the delegation that is joining us in Sweden, taking the time to give us their thoughts on the way forward, and I will call up some of these partners. Mr. K.N. Rao, Chairman SICMA Environmental and Sustainability Committee and Corporate EH Head, My Home Industries. Vivek Sharma, General Manager Projects, JK Cement. Bhanu Singh, Unit Head, Aditya Cement Works, Ultratech. Mr. Badola, Dalmia Cement. And Felipe Sanchez, Lead Country Partnerships, LeadIT. We do have, I understand, our founding partner from Dalmia joining us online, is that right? Aha, great. Dr. Singhvi, Mrs. Singhvi, thank you so much for joining us and being part of this delegation. This was done at 12 o'clock last night. Thanks so much to Anupam. So we are so happy to have you with us. If you would like to start today's panel by saying a few words.
Thank you, Arati.
Excellent. Yes, we can hear you.
Happy morning to all people in Sweden and happy day to all virtual participants. Friends, let me first compliment India and Sweden for this India-Sweden Innovation Day. It's a great partnership, great collaboration, which is doing great activities so as to foster growth and innovation together. Today also World Standard Day, and I'm sure this World Standard Day can also bring many countries together to have common standards. I'm so happy that my colleagues and my Indian cement industry stakeholders, they all are present here and are sharing their thoughts that what collaboration can play the role, what partnerships can play the role. We were very lucky that yes, we became founding member of LeadIT in COP in 2019. And at the same time, I think the way the partnerships are going on, the way memberships going on now, it's 36 members of LeadIT and LeadIT 2.0, and out of that, 6 companies are from India. What we are looking at LeadIT is that how it can further bridge the gap of technologies flowing from one country to another country. LeadIT is not only the partnership of India and Sweden, but there are 8 other countries also and other companies also. So what is expected out of LeadIT is that how it can become a very strong pillar for technology innovation, technology transfer, as well as creating roadmaps for these 2 very important sectors, which earlier they used to be called as a hard-to-abate sector like steel or cement, which has now been converted into possible to abate sector, and this was highlighted by Prime Minister of Sweden when he introduced LeadIT 2.0 in Dubai. So now the need is that whatever innovations have happened in any company, in any country, how they can become part of LeadIT and then how that can be shared. I think a lot of work would be required to be done to disseminate the new technologies which are happening. Second, one of the important pillars also is how to enhance the resources. So one of the resources is technology, but over and above that, now what we feel particularly in developing countries like India is that how climate finance can play a very important role. We do know that like my colleagues and other friends who are there, they also know that they have not many projects in their mind which they can implement. But the block may be the climate finance, block may be the climate grant which can come. So I would request that when these discussions takes place and ultimately when the government goes towards the government, then that climate finance be one of the major agenda for LeadIT. And third, I would say that particularly developed world have many policies which are supporting green growth, green innovations also. And if those policies can also be shared and then can be part of developing world, then it can also play a very important role. And one of the areas where I would like to highlight is that in cement industry, one of the important agenda and one of the important lever for decarbonization is to avoid usage of fossil fuel. Now, fossil fuel can be avoided provided there are congenial policies in which polluter has to pay policy comes in, and then definitely various type of hazardous material, various type of waste material can be used as a replacement of fossil fuel. Like Dalmia Cement, many other Indian companies have shown their way that it is possible, but at the same time to make it more cost effective also, as well as to play a very important role. I think polluter to pay policies which are prevalent in most of the European countries, that can also be part of recommendation from LeadIT to the Indian government and developing governments, then that will also help. I'm happy that LeadIT is helping the industries, the growth sectors to develop a roadmap for decarbonization. Yes, in India, even the Indian cement sector, they have been quite pioneer in coming out with low carbon technology roadmap maybe 12 years back. And now again, by our industries, cement manufacturing, this step has been already taken to come out with the roadmap for decarbonization. And I think that will also become one of the important documents for LeadIT to develop a roadmap for other sectors also, as well to combine this with the various other countries' cement roadmap. My best wishes to my Indian delegation to learn more and to get more inputs from Sweden. Like we know that companies like Sanchez and others, they have also developed some new technologies by which carbon footprints can be brought down. And we, cement industry of India, would also be sharing their experiences, because many of you might be knowing that our company, Dalmia Cement, is having one of the lowest carbon footprint in global cement world. So that can be also highlighted, that how it has been achieved, as well the technology for which we are looking for, and for which I think one major agenda is how to develop and how to implement carbon capture and utilization technology. Like earlier, my friend Dr. Chaturvedi also spoke about carbon capture utilization, carbon capture and sequestration. So I think this is one area which can take care of 45 to 50% of carbon footprints in the cement sector. So the major input which we want from not only Sweden but from LeadIT is that how this CCU and CCS can be developed in our country, which can also show the way to the whole world. So my best wishes, and thanks to you for giving me this opportunity.
Dr. Singh, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate you taking the time. And again, it was done with very short notice, so your time is really valuable. And of course, the audience is hearing what you say, and we will be discussing that after this. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anupam, I'd like to follow up now and to tell us the story, of course, of Dalmia being one of LeadIT's founding members, and the reasoning and the thinking that came up for you to join this partnership and your expectations.
Thanks, Arati. First of all, giving us this opportunity. And our sincere thanks to Government of India and Government of Sweden for starting this LeadIT initiative. And because of that LeadIT initiative, now we are having the first cement delegation, which is, visiting India. And we will be in next couple of days seeing various developments which are happening in India. So this LeadIT journey for us started in 2019. When our board director, Mr. Singh, along with Prime Minister of Sweden and various other dignitaries in 2019 at UN Climate Assembly, General Assembly, launched this LeadIT initiative. And it is a natural transition, and I will come to that, why we have joined LeadIT. Because at Dalmia Cement in 2018, we started the conversations around net zero and carbon negative. And we visited various technological developments which are happening across the world, whether it is Europe, whether it is US, tried to understand what is possible in our own way, through our resources, through our possibilities. and also what are there where greater collaboration would be required. And in that, then we kept one basket with two different nomenclature. One is existing levers, another one was nascent levers. In existing levers, we placed waste heat recovery, solar, energy efficiency, these kind of levers, which are commercialized and well available, solutions are available in the market. And the second one was the new nascent levers, which are still under development, and primarily green hydrogen, heat electrification, carbon capture and utilization. These are some new emerging levers, nascent levers, where definitely activities and collaborations like LeadIT are very, very important. Primarily, it brings governments. There are various governments now which are part of LeadIT. And it also brings the innovators as well as the technology providers at the same platform. And once government, technology providers, and industries, they are at the same platform, then definitely there are possibilities of greater partnerships. And as we understand that this is a challenge, basically climate mitigation or climate change, it is not just one company's or one person's challenge. Primarily, even if you see the greater targets which have been taken that are at economy level, understanding that it is not just one company's or one person's activity, but rather multiple organizations' role would be there. So from that perspective, LeadIT is a very important platform. It can drive policy, it can drive technology, and it can drive finance. And this is a tripod of basically decarbonization, essentially, if somebody has to reach to net zero. And by accelerating these three levers, I think it is possible to drive the net zero transition in the economies and particularly in sectors which are possible to abate.
So you've identified exactly what the expectations are, and you touched upon technology, policy, and finance. Coming back to Dr. Singhvi's point Mr. Singhvi's point in the beginning, he talked about polluter pays principles and how he actually wants to create a polluter pays principle for all industry members to actually be part of. Talk a little bit about that to us and the need for first movers to actually have a level playing field amongst industry partners in the country.
Certainly. So polluter pays principle primarily, like if you see in European countries, there are some examples of that. Primarily the landfill tax, for example. So if there is incinerable and other material which is going to the landfill, there is a heavy penalty on that. And what it does, it creates some kind of reverse economics. So once that reverse economics is created, naturally there are more emphasis and focus on recyclability and reuse of the materials rather than dumping them in the landfill or these kind of activities. So their polluter pays principle plays a very important role. And the Government of India has taken a lot of actions in that direction, particularly. We have various legacy mining and so many activities which are starting now from the landfills and recycling of the plastics, co-processing also, which is now increasing in the cement industry. But at the same time, if there are similar practices, policies are available, then definitely the circular economy advantage can be taken up. And this is a kind of a existing immediate lever which can be implemented and which can really bring down the CO2 emissions and brings more circularity into the system. So this is one important area. And considering that LeadIT is one of the coalition of the governments as well. So various policies which are applicable across the world on circular economy may be kind of an example. And those case studies, those activities can be shared across the governments, and from there probably it can be picked up by various governments across the world who have not implemented those technologies to further strengthening.
So using LeadIT as a mechanism to spread best practice so the industry can compete together. Thank you so much. And tell me, you're here, of course, in Sweden, arriving today or late last night for the week. What are expectations from LeadIT this week?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. So
I'll say this to Felipe because he's next.
Sorry.
No, please address it to Felipe, because he's answering your question.
Yeah. So that's I would say interesting question. So first of all, thanks to Felipe and Per, I see him there. So they have started this interesting dialogue of industries and research institutions. So we'll be visiting key research institutions of Sweden. We'll be also visiting Saltex, which is also one of the important technology player in Sweden, who have worked on plasma calcination technology. And going forward, we see that how it provides entire solution to higher temperatures also, 1500 degrees centigrade. I see Mr. Ludwig also here, who is from Swedish Energy Agency. And we also, going forward, see that demonstration projects through the help of Swedish Energy Agency gets set up in India. And those demonstration projects are really, really helpful. Because we have seen those past successes from waste heat recovery plant, which has happened in India, and then today the total waste heat recovery capacity is 600 degrees centigrade. So expectation is that we learn from those initiatives which are taking up. We also share our experiences, what we have learned so far in the cement technology that we have implemented. And we have experts from the cement. We have very senior representatives from the cement industry. We will be sharing our experiences, and we will be learning from those research institutions. The important aspect primarily with the Swedish Energy Agency that I would like to share, primarily from the expectation point of view, is that how some innovative models of finance are designed either through underwriters or through some public support, because it is very essential to have public support for the innovative technologies, demonstration technologies, and the risk capital currently is not available. So once that risk capital gets unlocked, it would be possible to develop small scale or demonstration scale plants, but that is very important, and that is, I think, one of the key expectations in the long term, going forward through LeadIT and through the government of Sweden and government of India's partnership.
Excellent. So Felipe, I'm going to come to you now, because of course you were here with us this morning when we talked about kind of where we are at the strategic level, where we are at the partner level, and now we want to talk operations. We want to talk what's happening here and now. You've heard, of course, Dalmia talking about their expectations, but also the reasons why they've joined. They see a real value in joining a platform of like-minded, willing coalition partners to find technology, policy, and finance for the way forward. So Felipe, from your point of view, and of course the delegation that's with us this week, what is happening on the ground with the ITP?
Thanks, Arati. And maybe I can just start by emphasizing a point about connecting Sweden and India in the first place. So we have India, as we've heard already. The cement industry in India is already highly efficient when it comes to thermal energy, electrical energy, and it's a place where we're expecting a lot of growth and demand in basic materials. So the next step is naturally to look at those innovative technologies, those breakthrough technologies. And we have, on the other side, a front runner in the transition globally, Sweden. And some of the companies that we'll be visiting during the delegation's visit are exactly the kind of companies that are front runners. So we have Heidelberg Materials developing a CCS, carbon capture and storage plant in Slite to be operational by 2030. And we also have Semvision and Saltex, who are challenging the notion that CCS is the only game in town when it comes to decarbonizing cement industry. So bringing these two together to be able to work together, India, Sweden, to be able to mutually benefit from that collaboration is key. So, and just to come back to your question then, I think the main thing that we've had to do is build political commitment. So firstly, we are very fortunate to have reached political commitment at the highest level at COP28, as we heard earlier from the Deputy Prime Minister, Prime Minister Modi, Prime Minister Christensen, launching the ITP and LeadIT 2.0. And we've seen throughout this year that high-level political support has also filtered down to the ministries level. So we have very engaged ministries in India, agencies in Sweden as well, ministries and agencies, and that's key to really make things happen. It's one thing to have it at the highest level, but you really need that to trickle down to the working level, if you will. So now that we have that foundation, that political commitment at both levels, we have an umbrella under which companies are able to come together and safely collaborate, right? Business-to-business partnerships, together with research institutes. And right now we've been nailing a little bit of the what, and we have to think about the how. And what do I mean by that? Those of you who know me will know I have a terrible sweet tooth, so let me use a cake analogy. we know what the ingredients are for this cake, right? Dr. Malaga mentioned it earlier. We know the decarbonization routes that we need. We know the technology. We know the policies. Now we have to think about the how. What is the recipe? What is the know-how? How are we actually going to come together to deliver some of these solutions on the ground? What are the finance mechanisms that Mr. Anupam mentioned just now? So it's focusing on getting to the recipe. We're starting to source the ingredients. Now let's start focusing on the recipe to develop this in practice.
I'm just going to ask a quick follow-up because, of course, we had the panel prior to this, and you mentioned Katarina's comments on what can be done and the how. But also the focus on different stakeholders, because we've heard now through the day that there are different stakeholders that have different access and agendas in driving this forward. We have research, we have government, we have academia, and we have industry. From LeadIT's perspective and the ITP's perspective, how will this come together? What are the mechanisms by which this collaboration can happen? And has it happened?
So one of the main things we're doing is just bringing these actors together at the right time. So as I mentioned, there's a certain sequencing to this, right? You want the governments to kind of come to an agreement first on what's going to be done, on how it's done, the companies to come in, and then finally the research institutes to come in to finally get down to the nitty-gritty, decide what is it exactly that you're working on. So I think that what LeadIT is doing is facilitating these conversations, convening the right actors, and just ensuring that momentum keeps going, acting as a sort of trusted partner, a critical friend, as these collaborations are taking place.
So then I'm going to come to the other delegation partners that are on the stage right now, of course, with expectations, like Anupam, of what you want to see. If you could tell us about the company, and of course, you're here with us for the week, and you have an agenda, quite a heavy agenda in terms of what to see, both in terms of industry partners, but also disruptors that are, and I think Felipe said, making us question some of the assumptions that maybe industry partners in India had. Tell us what your expectations are.
Hi, good morning, Arati. I'm working with JK Cement, and JK Cement is a very renowned name in Indian cement industry. We have close to 50 years of experience in manufacturing grey cement and close to 40 years in manufacturing white cement. Now, if you see, our capacity, installed capacity is around 24.5 million tons as we stand today. And the demand that is looking ahead, we are at the moment investing around 30 billion rupees for another expansion of 6 million, which will make our capacity to 30 million tons by FY 26. JK Cement, as a company, always is quite committed for a sustainable development, and we are partner to GCCA and SBTI, as well as United Nations, US Energy, UN Energy, right? And we also collaborate with Indian firms like Cement Manufacturers Association, NCBM, and CII. Now, when we started this, we did some targeting to achieve some goals for the sustainable development. So at the time, in 2019, for CO2 emissions, we were having around 580 kgs per ton of CO2 per ton of cementitious material, and we have target to achieve 465 kg per ton of cementitious material by FY30. So now, as we stand today, we have achieved some improvement in that, almost 9% reduction, and we are around 512 kgs per ton of cementitious material. Another one, we are changing our green power mix. The power requirement today, we are having around 168 megawatts of installation, which is green energy based, which is through WHRS as well as solar plants and wind energy. Another, we aspire to have capacity of around 190 megawatt, and by year FY26, through captive capacity addition or maybe public partnership. So we are committed towards this. Another thing that we are doing is, we are doing some developing, green. We are developing facilities which is like, about, just a minute, biodiversity parks also. We are also committed for thermal substitution, which is like we plan to achieve around 35% of thermal substitute through, reducing fossil fuels and using alternate fuels. Of 35%, we are trying to achieve by FY30. Presently, we have already achieved around 17% of our thermal substitution through alternative fuels. We also are, trying to be water positive, around five times of our requirements, and we have already achieved 4 times. As per these targets are basically, these targets are developed in collaboration with the companies like GCCA, and then these are vetted also by them, what we have achieved so far.
So let me ask you, Vivek, because you talk about the ambition that you've set internally, and these are quite high. You're talking about not doubling, but almost 25% more in terms of renewable energy installed capacity that you have access to in a very short amount of time to make these changes possible. Dr. Singh, you mentioned policy as one lever to allow companies to work together. Anupam talked about the way in which polluter pays levied across the board can allow industry to work together, because you're creating incentives.
Yeah.
For you, JK Cement has set internal ambition. What do you need to see from the industry partners around you, both in India and the ones that you'll meet during the course of this week, in terms of working together?
No, see, carbon capturing, like you see, it's like the topic very hot. Now, we are also like in India, we are doing a pilot project for carbon capturing. And we are in collaboration with NCCBM as well as Indian Institute of Technology, Kanpur. So some deliberations are already started by our company. Yeah, like funding is the issue, that's been one of the areas. But company is quite committed. Our leadership is very much committed towards, sustainable growth. And we already have some approvals from our top management to take up these kind of projects.
Before I come to Mr. Rao, I want to ask you, why is this so attractive, this solution? Because, of course, there's indications that there are alternative solutions out there. But what is the key factor that makes this something that JK Cement is looking at?
Well, I didn't understand.
So you're looking at CCUS, you're looking at this being a technology you would like to develop. And you're working with scientists and researchers to understand how you can deploy this solution. If I were to ask you why this is a solution that you're looking at, is it the finance mechanism? Is it the way it can be easily deployed? Or is there a reason that this is the technology that you've decided to investigate?
No, the point is, it's like the steps taken by our company, to move ahead in this particular direction. Obviously, there are technologies, for this particular visit that I'm here, I'm going to see all this thing development over here. And maybe, we can see how we can, absorb these in India with our, manufacturing practices and, making it, more commercially viable and acceptable.
So before I come to Mr. Rao, I want to come back to Felipe, because, of course, there is a technology roadmap being developed by the partners that are part of this discussion on decarbonization. And the different elements need to be taken into account. Of course, finance, we've heard that now by everyone. Policy, research enablers. From a LeadIT perspective, when you look at JK Cement and how much they've done already, what do you think could be the next step? You're going to Soltex, you mentioned. The next step to understanding what are the alternatives? What else is available?
I think that's a really good question. I think one of the key things is understanding, it's one thing seeing innovative technologies work in Sweden. It's another seeing, okay, is this going to work for the local context that I'm used to, for instance, in India? So I think it's asking that question as you're seeing the technology, and I'm sure everyone in the delegation is going to be asking that question when they're seeing some of this, like, would this realistically work in India? But asking the questions, okay, what is it about the circumstances in India that don't make it viable at the moment, and what are the circumstances that could change, that could make it viable? And I think it comes back to Mr. Singh's point and the point made by several others here on the panel. It's the enabling conditions that are important that can be changed through policy.
Mr. Rao, I'm going to come to you now. You've heard Felipe, you've heard all the other speakers on the panel. You're coming here with expectations. And you also have a lot of ambition on the ground of what's already happening, and you've already talked about the expansion plans that SICMA has. Tell us about who you are, where you come from, and of course also your expectations of being in Sweden this week.
So, good morning to all. My name is K.N. Rao from Corporate Sustainability of My Home Industries, which is a company which is in the entire value chain of cement. We are actually a real estate company manufacturing green buildings, both for the residential and commercial. In the part of the journey that we actually done a backward integration to manufacturing of cement, ready-mix concrete, precast buildings, and ultimately we come to the stage that we want to decarbonize and do a net zero building. We are the founding member of IGBC, Indian Green Building Council. We felt that we required to do the activities for entire materials, building materials which are used in the real estate, like, let it be steel, cement, and glass, aluminum, and wood, and materials what we are using. Without we decarbonize all these materials, we cannot create the built environment which is net zero building. So we as a company have made a commitment that we will going to make buildings from 2025 onwards, all buildings will be net zero. Net zero on waste, net zero on water, net zero on energy, and net zero on CO2. So with this commitment, we were only thinking about our focus is trying to test the collaborations. Like I was there in UK, I seen one collaborative work in terms of net zero ecosystem. Now, when we want to do a net zero system of a cement plant, from an association point of view, when I'm also part of the chairman of South India Cement Manufacturing Association, we start looking at the 150 million tons of capacity of cement and having a potential of close to 110 million tons of CO2 emitted in a cluster. So what we found that identified the clusters, that now we have 4 clusters, we are delivering going to generate close to 100 million ton plus CO2. And unless we don't create an ecosystem, that we will not be able to do the net zero system for the as an entire cement industry in that cluster. Unlike Europe, in India is a very large country. We are producing 700 million tons in 11 clusters. In each cluster, you have a large potential of close to 40-50 million tons of CO2. We need a very large player to create that ecosystem. And for me, CO2 capture and creating infrastructure is a service. If you are able to create to a large player, like what I've seen in other countries, that if you are able to create a large capacity systems, most probably the cost of the decarbonization becomes cheaper. I think what in the previous speakers have mentioned that, no, unless something proven technologies are there already, but we require a scale. When it comes to the scale, the cost of service becomes cheaper. So that's what we are actually looking into. And we need to have we need to create a demand. Who is asking for the cement, for the green cement? And how to make it affordable. So to make it affordable also, you need to have a scale. So that is what actually we are addressing, that we need to have a ecosystem where the demand for the green materials are available. Green steel, green cement, green aluminum, and green glass. If you are able to create that ecosystem, that demand aggregation, what we are thinking that when you do a cluster approach, we can create a demand aggregation, and then we start working to every stakeholder, let it be finance, how it should be risk-free finance for him if he is going to fund a cluster. Individual companies having a limitation how much amount of money they can put into the particular work. But if you're able to do a cluster, we'll be able to get the scale and we'll be able to make the financial viable. So that is what we are actually working. I'm giving an example that we are in the southern part of India. We have a coast of sea is there adjacent to the state. We have a cement cluster having a 50 million tons of CO2 being emitted per year. Now, we are thinking that how much we can convert into useful products, and what is that which we cannot convert can be sequestered and stored in the oil wells or gas wells, or we can do in the basalt rock, We see all the options. When we see that the low-hanging fruits which are there, we will implement those ideas first. And as we progress, then we will ultimately come out with the difficult approach where the viability is less. So this is something is the approach that we think about a cluster level approach which is actually going to address the problems. Because in an example that recently, last year, with the Volvo, we actually done a collaborative application for the Hydrogen Valley, where we brought the refinery, steel, cement, and all the fertilizer, all the industries together. And some of them are actually producers of hydrogen, some are the users of hydrogen. How to try to create an ecosystem where all the players are ultimately able to use this particular material. Like somebody is making a fertilizer and is able to get a green hydrogen. I'm going to use for the logistics. So hydrogen I'm going to use it for the inbound and outbound logistics. I'm ultimately going to get the fly ash and slag from one location to the other and using the hydrogen logistics. So this is something which we are actually seeing. There should be in a system where when you create infrastructure, it should be fully utilized, and it should not be for one company. It is for the group of companies which that is something which is required to demonstrate. I think it happened that we're lucky, we are unfortunate that our application through the Department of Science and Technology, it could not go through. But right now we decided that with the Volvo, we will be going with this project without the help of central government also, because we found that it is a business case, that it is viable to do the project of when you have so many consortium members together, then ultimately the amount of additional premium which we require to pay for the green hydrogen is definitely achievable. So there is something which we are thinking currently. Without the government support, we would like to do a green hydrogen pilot of delivering the hydrogen to the different consumers with some amount of premium over the current fuel what we are using. That is something which is being attempted. Similarly, on the carbon capture, we are in a cluster where we have a basalt rock and we have used oil wells and gas wells. We can like to do a pilot on both the sides and try to create a system that captured CO2 will be utilized by the fertilizer company and captured CO2 will be utilized for the chemical companies. And then these things now what I was thinking is that the type of companies which are actually in the interest of delivering these technical solutions of using the green hydrogen and producing hydrocarbons and fertilizers and fuels and polymers, everything can be produced in that cluster, and the balance we will send it to whether we would like to do it in a basalt rock sequestration or into oil well.
I'm going to actually come in because I think you raised something and I want to give the other partners a chance to respond, because you've raised a very, very, very important part, which is it's one thing to have the cement industry is actually taking the step and raising the willingness and the ambition, but there needs to be demand. Yeah. There needs to be a market that actually takes your products. Yeah. Anupam, Vivek, I want to ask you to comment on what Mr. Rao has said. He's created a business case through the creation of clusters. What do you see?
Yes, certainly. The cluster, hub and cluster approach is one of the, I think, long-term approach, which ultimately will be, since cement plants are clustered, it is around the limestone belt. Wherever the limestone belt will be, the cement plant will be linked to that. So in the larger context of creating scale, and I'll give you an example. For the first time, we created a free visibility report of carbon capture and utilization with Asian Development Bank. And as per that report, the first alternative was 0.5 million ton scale, which was carbon capture and utilization of it in the urea as a fertilizer. So there, the viability gap funding was $86 per ton of CO2. But the moment we double the scale from 0.5 million ton to 1 million ton, the viability gap funding came down from $86 to $55. Now, if there are even larger hub and cluster approach, probably running into millions of tons, what Mr. Rao has mentioned, naturally the cost would come down. But at the same time, important would be that also simultaneous policy development at international level on green procurement. And second, international policy development on carbon markets. So currently what is happening is we don't have, last week I was, few weeks back I was in the New York Climate Week, and one of the key messages in one of the LeadIT event, there was CO2 does not require a visa. But what is the case is currently we have for CO2 emission reductions, we have visa, because there are restrictive markets of carbon. they are not internationally available. So probably rather than CO2 emissions, we need to have emission reductions which are free. And that is one important policy aspect we also need to look into while developing the hub and cluster approach. Thank you.
I'm going to ask you a follow-up question, because you've got the PLI scheme in India, the product-linked incentive. Is that something that is applicable here when you're talking about creating best practice technology transfer to achieve kind of the business cases you're looking at?
So currently, if you see the examples in Europe, so primarily the carbon capture projects or the electrification projects or other advanced technology projects, primarily they are coming from the public funding. There is a lot of public funding in those projects. And the reason for that is naturally risk capital. Currently, risk capital is not available. And I'll give you another example. In New York Climate Week, there were some technologies. One of the technology providers was telling that I can make cement at 500 degrees centigrade, which does not require 1500 degrees centigrade. And there is a lot of, in startups, there is a lot of signals, a lot of noises. So it is also important that we have right signals and we have to filter out the signals from the noises. This is also important. But see the technological development space, which was used to happen, in 10 decades, 5 decades, 2 decades, it is happening within a year period, 2-year period. And therefore, there needs to be availability of risk capital because the early movers also carry that risk. So from that perspective, it is very important that we have these kind of universal mechanisms available across the world, primarily in emerging and developing countries. We currently don't have them. But once they are available in developing and emerging economies, they will primarily become the grounds of the cost reduction for such technologies. Because then they can supply to the overall world such technologies. Even if it is discovered in Sweden, it is innovated in US, it is innovated somewhere else. But if the technology transfer in a free environment takes place, free in the sense non-restrictive technology transfer takes place, then countries like India can provide the scale and can also reduce the cost and supply the technology to the world.
And create these win-win kind of environments.
Yes.
But then you've also talked about like de-risking first movers, de-risking kind of the coalition of the willing. Vivek, I'd like to ask you to give us your thoughts on what Anupam is saying in terms of how do we move forward to de-risk some of the issues that come up when you're looking at new technologies.
No, like Anupam said, I'm totally in sync with him. We need some enabling environment, which is, which provides, this risk money. Otherwise, it's being, of course, we have commitment towards sustainable, growth, development, everything. But then, we need this side support. It's capital intensive.
I want you to look at Felipe when you say that, because Felipe is going to take us to the end of this panel. Tell us what you've heard in this panel and how this informs kind of the next steps for the ITP on the ground.
I mean, I've heard a lot of things that are useful in terms of technology, the need for finance, the speed and the scale that we need to achieve to be able to decarbonize. And I think for me, what's most striking is that for us under the ITP, we're looking towards COP30. The timeframes are very, very small. So a lot of things need to happen very fast. And I'm hoping that we continue to have this momentum. This is just one step. The delegation visit today is just one step in that process, but continue to build that momentum so we can work together as quickly as possible in the year that we have at the moment.
Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in giving our panel a warm round of applause.